Good afternoon, America. Welcome to the Got Freedom Podcast. Your host, Chad Hummel, on the We the People Podcast Network, in studio here in Rochester, New York, with my producer, Austin. Austin, introduce yourself as always, please.
Hello.
There
How's
it is.
everybody going?
There's the thumbs up.
Everybody doing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you were close.
Yeah. I mixed how's it going with how's everybody doing. And yep, that's all right.
Well, you know what? In today's day and age here in dreaded, tyrannical New York State, everything's all mixed up. So you're forgiven there, Mr. Producer.
Oh, good. Appreciate that.
You've been pardoned by Apostle Hochul. Apostle Hochul, she'll pardon you as long as you have your mask on and you get jabbed 3 or 4 times a week.
Yes,
you can do whatever you want in New York State.
I wear my masks the same way she does.
Of course, there she is. We've covered that topic before, but there is Empress, Apostle, Queen, whatever you want to call her, Hochul. That was her. Just to remind you, that's her back on December 10th announcing the indoor, where she appears to be, mask mandate, which she's clearly not following. But, hey, what else can we do right now but make a joke of it? So with that said, there are many, many, many more bombshell / hypocrisies that I am going to point out to you today. I'm certain that most of you, I have a very studious, well-engaged following out there. And so most of you may have already heard of some of these things or have seen of some of these things that are going around in your school district right now here in Monroe County. But I want to cover all of these things first before we get started. Hopefully, perhaps many of you won't be tuning into this podcast until later on today or tomorrow, because hopefully you are down at the rally right now, the Unmask the Kids rally, which is being staged right now. I don't mean staged in the sense of fake, of course, but there's a huge rally going on right now in Pittsford at the Four Corners of Pittsford. I believe it started at 2:30 and is going to be going until approximately 5:30. Of course, there's never really a defined end time for these types of events. So if you are getting out of work in the next half hour or so, and you feel compelled, which of course you should be, right? We should mandate you. You should be mandated to attend, just not Austin and I, because we're here at the studio without our masks on, but you should be mandated to go down to the Four Corners in Pittsford right now before 5:30. Get down there, support the troops that are down there, so to speak. Support all the individuals, the moms, the dads, the kids that are down there speaking the truth. Right? That's as simply as I can put it. They're speaking the truth about the COVID regulations and more particularly the insane mask mandates. All right, so let's jump into it. Let me see here. We have a question already from Maureen. Serious question. How is it ethical or legal to be reporting a shot that is not scheduled to attend school to the state? She is saying masks coming off will be dependent upon school children vaccination rates. Who is reporting? Well, it's not, right? That's the simple answer. It's not legal or ethical. But as we have found out, unfortunately, none of this stuff, and this is a good segue to some of the things that I'll be covering today. None of this is legal, obviously, right? That was what the court ruling out of Nassau County clearly delineated back on January 24th. Was that the mask mandates are illegal and unconstitutional and unenforceable. But yet here we are, and we are still providing the cover of de facto law to our local school districts because we are vastly complying. So, Maureen, it's not legal, but if we comply, if we provide our vaccination status, if we provide our children's vaccination status, which many of you probably are, right? Many of you are probably going along to get along as we speak. I've already received many emails from my district, kind of planted amongst other topics of discussion in emails are references to, oh, and by the way, make sure you let us know if your child has been vaccinated. And of course, that begs the question, well, why? As Maureen just correctly pointed out, there's no requirement right now. There's nothing in the state mandating system or the data collection systems of the nurses' offices or of the school districts in general to get that information. It's not part of the normal schedule of vaccinations on the law books right now. So, as parents, of course, at the beginning of each year, we have to update our children's medical records by providing proof that they're vaccinated according to pediatric schedules. And of course, the COVID vaccine is not on those schedules. So why would the school districts be asking for you, the parents, to voluntarily provide that information right now? And that's because they are ramping up for just that, for it being a law, for it being a requirement. And more importantly, that's why the kids are still wearing the masks, so that they can continue to dangle that carrot over your head, the parent's head, and the children's head. In other words, as Hochul has told us many times, taking the masks off are tied to the vaccination rates. So if they can trick you into providing that data because you think that the masks will come off at some point, then I guess you've been fooled. So get your kid vaccinated if you want. Certainly, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think it's a good idea personally. But if you want to get your kid vaccinated, obviously that's your choice. I don't know why that also equates to you having to report it to the school district right now. And I certainly wouldn't be reporting it. But in any event, okay. So, oh boy, where do we begin? There's so much to cover here today. One of the things that you've all seen going around recently is this letter that was written by Lawrence Bo Wright. Lawrence Bo Wright, the president of the Monroe County Council of School Superintendents. And I'm going to go ahead and poo-poo on this letter right now. I'm just going to get it right there, right out in the open. I'm not going to keep you guessing on my take. I've already put it out there on social media. I know some of you are applauding this letter. And all I can say is this. I understand why you're applauding this letter, because it's something, right? You're looking at it as if it's better than nothing. I'm looking at it simply like this. Number one, it's way too late. And number two, it's about as phony as it gets. So let me just quickly read this letter here. It's up on the screen. It's addressed to the Honorable Kathy Hochul. So that's where we go wrong right from the get-go, Austin. Of course, it should say Apostle Hochul, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Come on.
So Mr. Wright, who's the president of the Monroe County Council of Superintendents, he's misaddressed the Empress up there in Albany as the Honorable. There's nothing honorable about her. But in any event, let's move on here. Let's not digress too much. So, dear Governor Hochul, the past 2 years have not been easy, and we thank you for your efforts, blah, blah, blah. I mean, give me a break, right? He starts right off by blowing the smoke up her ass. We are writing to enlist your support to help schools statewide regain a much-needed sense of normalcy. And, what does that even mean, right? We are writing to enlist your support to help schools regain normalcy. Well, she's the one that obviously is in charge of the abnormalcy. So why would you be asking the person so politely and kindly who's directly responsible for the insane, illogical, and immoral sense of abnormalcy? Why would you be asking that person for help? Why don't you just look in the mirror, Mr. Wright? Why don't you go to your superintendents and say, look, we know this is wrong. We know this is abnormal. We know this is not normal. We know this is harmful to the school children. And therefore, I am directing all of you to stop the madness, right? And we're going to get into this in a moment, because I know some of you are saying to yourselves right now, and you're shouting at the screen right now, yeah, but Kathy Hochul has the power and the authority, right? So he has to ask her for permission. That's wrong. That's false. And I'm going to show you the direct proof, right? Not my opinion, not my take, not my assumptions. I'm going to show you the direct proof, right from the school administrators here in Monroe County, that proves that they know that the court decision that was rendered on the 24th was the law. and will remain the law, despite what Kathy Hochul says. So there's no reason to blow smoke up Kathy Hochul's ass and ask her for permission to return to a sense of normalcy. All right, at this rate, Austin, around 8:30, we'll get through this letter. As superintendents who have guided Monroe County school districts during this challenging time, we understand why the state has required certain measures. Well, Mr. Wright, you don't speak for most parents in Monroe County then, because we don't understand. We really, truly don't understand the insaneness of all of these COVID regulations. He goes on, however, we believe it is time to prepare for the next phase of a return to life as our students once knew it. Okay, great. Children have endured unbelievable challenges during the past 2 years, from school closure to hybrid and remote learning, from physical distancing to masking. They have adapted at every turn. Yeah, well, I don't think so. But now it is imperative that we develop a plan to move forward. Okay, get to the point, Bo. We have worked. Yeah, that's me talking, right? I never get to the point, do I? Anyway, we have worked so hard to keep our schools safe and believe we can do that as infection rates continue to drop and requirements are reduced. We are asking the state to develop an exit strategy. That masking mandate is being reviewed by the courts, and a decision is expected next month. No matter the outcome, schools must have a plan in place to move forward. Many families worry that masking rules and other mitigation strategies are here for good. They need reassurances that these measures will expire. That's very interesting, right? I mean, that's the only thing. If I was reading just that sentence there, that last sentence, I would be all on board with Mr. Wright's sentiments here. But again, I am going to show you otherwise momentarily why this is a false flag here by Bo Wright, by Lawrence Bo Wright, the president of the Monroe County Council of School Superintendents. I'm going to show you proof momentarily and discuss the proof of how the local school superintendents are doing the exact opposite, right? They're not preparing for an exit strategy to eliminate masks. They are directly and actively preparing for a so-called exit strategy into their own masking requirements, right? Not ones where they're dependent upon what the state says, but ones where they're on the books of the Board of Education policy and they're enforcing them locally, right at your school district, okay? And Lawrence Bo Wright has to obviously know that because he's the superintendent of one of those school districts in Rush Henrietta. And then lastly, in the last paragraph, it says, as superintendents, we know the importance of listening to different voices. Not sure what that means. And we appreciate your willingness to hear our concerns. We respectfully request that you and the New York State Department of Health promptly create an exit strategy for masking and other mitigation strategies. Our communities anxiously await your response. Sincerely, Lawrence Bo Wright. All right. So I know it sounds all fluffy and all that good stuff, but that's exactly all it is. It's all just a bunch of fluff because it's not, in fact, what the school districts are doing right now. It's not, in fact, what the superintendents and the boards of education are doing right now. So let's put that silly letter aside and let me cross that off my list. And we're going to, not that I'm teasing the proof that I have, but I am. We're going to jump around here a little bit and let's have a little fun. Not that it's really all that funny, but we have a photograph of pretty high profile politician in the United States of America. She's taking a beautiful photograph, very photogenic with her uncovered face. There she is. Look at that. Stacey Abrams. Who is Stacey Abrams anymore? I don't even know. Is she still an elected official? I think she's maybe a senator out of Georgia or something.
You got me. Hold on. I can
Come
look it
on,
up for you.
Austin. I mean, Google knows the answer, don't they? I mean, I should know the answer. I'm pretty sure she's a governor. She's the governor of Georgia. I think she's a governor.
She is a former Georgia state representative. That is what comes up when you type her name into Google.
Yeah, what the hell do I know about politics? What is her current role? My viewers and listeners are way more astute than I am, so they're probably going to let us know.
I don't know that she's had anything since 2017.
I know I know she assisted in organizing some campaigns the last time around, and she was credited by the Democrats with getting a couple high-profile people elected to the United States Senate and all that. Um, but right now she doesn't currently hold a political office. So what the hell is she doing sitting in a classroom full of kids?
Well, it's spreading COVID. She's not
Yeah,
wearing a mask.
obviously. What does Wikipedia say? All right, screw it.
In office until 2017. Looks like she hasn't done anything for 5 years.
So she was a state representative in Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least I had the state right.
Yeah, there you go. Look at you.
All right. Did any of our viewers give us the answer? Come on, folks, help me out here. Stealing elections is her current role. There you go. Thank you. Who was that? Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. That's probably the most accurate description that we'll get here. But anyway, so there she is. Where's the picture? It's still up there. There she is, right? Look at, what is her, 4 dozen kids in that photograph, masked, as she sits in front of them. I don't even know how to describe what I'm seeing here. Right? So maybe I should just sit here in silence, right? It's kind of like when somebody hits the game-winning home run in the bottom of the 12th inning in Game 7 of the World Series. The announcer is supposed to just kind of sit there and not say anything, right? Don't spoil the moment. Let the viewers just kind of take it all in. Just take that in. You as a parent here in Monroe County, you've masked your kid every day for the past 2 years through tears, through angst, through depression, through suffering, knowing all along it was illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional. Then you get a court ruling in New York State that says just that says all the things that you've been telling your school district as they whine and complain to you. Oh, there's nothing we can do, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There's nothing we can do. Our hands are tied. We really don't like these mask rules either, but we have no choice. We have to follow what the law says. We have to follow what the state is telling us to do. Our hands are tied, right? And then along comes a court and unties their hands, and you would think they would be jumping up and down and celebrating with us. Nope, they sure don't. Nope, right? They run immediately to, oh yeah, but we have our own masking policy. You have to continue to wear the mask, or we don't follow the law anymore. Now we follow what some bureaucratic agency, the New York State Department of Education, tells us to do. Maybe she should have, Mike Abraham says, maybe she should have sat in on a PE class. I don't know what a PE class is, folks. So I don't know what the hell he's trying to say there.
Gym.
Oh, Jim. Geez, Austin, we're going to get sued now. We were supposed to pretend like we didn't know what the hell Mike Abraham was talking about.
I thought I misread his name. I thought his name was Jim.
Oh, yeah, Jim Abraham.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. The commenter.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wait, what did you think I meant?
I thought you meant gym class, as in PE stood for physical education class. So in other words,
who would say that?
I thought what Mike Abraham was saying there was, well, never mind. You guys get the point. And he's right. But anyway, so back to the masks, right? So there she is. And that's one of the government officials. And you've seen the pictures, right? I mean, I've posted them all over social media. You've seen them here on this podcast. You've seen them, all over other people's social media accounts, especially here in Monroe County, right? We have a big crew of people that are constantly working to expose these hypocrites. So you have the Dr. Mike Mendozas and the Adam Bellows and the Bob Duffys and so on and so forth. And then you have these higher state level officials in Georgia and all over the country, right? We've seen Nancy Pelosi trouncing around without the mask and Gavin Newsom out in California. But, and of course our governor, right? As we started the show off with, there's Mr. Bello. Austin, right on cue. Great job. So of course, it just shocks the conscience, right? It shocks the conscience that we continue to sit here and take it. And I'm guilty too, right? I mean, I think I'd like to think that I've done my part for the most part. Nobody can do everything. I've tried to be outspoken. I've tried to lead by example with my own personal situation with the arrest. I've assisted people in, various legal aspects of this. So I've tried to do as much as I possibly can do. I know that I know that there's probably more that I could do, but there's only so much one person can do. But anyway, this isn't about me. This is about these officials, right? These are the government officials who are forcing all of this upon us, right? Who are putting us in a position where we have to choose between wrong and wronger, right? They keep putting us in this position, yet they have zero problem whatsoever publicly showing their faces, violating the very things that they are asking us to do, requiring us to do under threat of fine, right? $1,000 fine here in Monroe County if you're caught without a mask indoors. Yet there's Adam Bello, who said he's going to follow the statewide mandate, right? There's maskless Adam Bello indoors declaring that he's going to follow maskless Governor Hochul's indoor mask mandate. And then there's Stacey Abrams sitting with your kids down there in Georgia, right? So all of you parents who masked up your kids and sent them to school because you feel like, you're doing it out of respect, you're doing it out of safety, you're doing it for whatever the hell reason you're doing it, yet in walks Stacey Abrams and sits with them with no mask on. I don't know. Maybe you're just not shocked anymore. Maybe they've beaten us down so much that you're just not shocked anymore and you accept it. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But there she is, smiling away, no shame in her game, and those poor kids have their faces all covered up for no reason other than theater, which I guess it leads me to believe this. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. And I don't know, they're fighting back in Canada, they're fighting back in the UK, they're fighting back all over the world. We're fighting back too in little pockets here and there, but there has not been one collective movement yet that I've seen in the United States, one big collective movement. Perhaps that might change. I understand that there might be a similar event as to what the truck drivers have done up in Canada, up in Ottawa right now. So, okay. Where do we go from here? All right. So let me try to get us a good lead in here to this bombshell information, these documents that I want to show you. And again, we kind of have to go back to the beginning just a little bit, just so that you understand where this all began and what the lead up is to, where things stand now. So I'll try to, as succinctly as possible, paint you that picture. So I've covered this before, but I know there's going to be, new people watching, hopefully. And again, a good refresher for those that have listened before. But we go back to the summer, we go back to August 24th, and the Department of Health, which is an executive agency, right? It's not a legislative body. And simple civics lesson, 3 branches of government, right? The executive, the legislative, and the judicial, okay? Obviously, that there's only one of those 3 branches that has the authority, the constitutional authority to pass laws, right? And that is the legislative body, right? You selected choice B, the legislative body. So the Department of Health, which is not a legislative body, it is a executive body. It's an executive administrative agency. All right. Just like the Department of Motor Vehicles is, just like the Department of Social Services. These aren't legislative bodies given the authority to write laws. They are simply administrative bodies given the authority at most to administer rules and regulations to carry out laws that are actually on the books, right? That were actually passed into law by the legislative body, signed into law by the sitting governor. So the Department of Health institutes this so-called law through an administrative mechanism that becomes what's called NYCRR, New York Codes of Rules and Regulations 2.60. And NYCRR 2.60 says that the commissioner of the Department of Health may institute a mask mandate in New York State. And it started off with a mask mandate in schools, healthcare settings, so on and so forth. And then it progressed into December, on December 10th, which was that photograph of Kathy Hochul that we showed you earlier at the beginning of the program. On December 10th, Kathy Hochul extended that indoor mask mandate through the Department of Health, through the commissioner of the Department of Health. They extended it to all indoor locations in New York State. any indoor location that is not a residence. And there it is up on the screen. So, and then that was challenged, right? That was challenged by this court case in Nassau County. And as you all know, last Monday or 2 Mondays ago now, I can't keep it straight, but on the 24th, on January 24th, so that was what, 2 Mondays ago, January 24th, a Supreme Court ruling out of Nassau County in New York State rendered 2.60 unconstitutional, illegal, and unenforceable, and void, meaning it doesn't exist, right? It's literally erased from the textbook. It doesn't exist is what this court ruled. Okay? And now we have to freeze there. All right? Because we all know what happened since. We all know that since then, there was an appeal filed by New York State and a stay put in place on that decision. That's fine. But when we do the freeze frame on the 24th and on the 25th, right? The 25th, that Tuesday, that was kind of the operative date that we're referring to. When we do a freeze frame on the 25th, the law in New York State was that indoor mask mandates, especially including schools, were unenforceable. So, of course, we all found out about that Monday night and early Tuesday morning, and we all said, this is great news. Our superintendents and our principals must, of course, think this is wonderful news because they've been telling us, lying to us all along, lying to us that they would love to get rid of the mask mandate, that they hate it too, and that they're just following along too, and that if we really want to complain about it, we should stop emailing them, we should stop harassing them, and we should stop protesting against them and letter writing and filing lawsuits. We should go take our complaints to the governor because it's the governor that is forcing them to mask our kids. And, as superintendents, and I have all these emails, as superintendents, we took an oath to follow the law. We took an oath to follow the state constitution and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Yet that lie was clearly exposed when on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, almost to a man and a woman, the superintendents in Monroe County declared that they were not going to follow the law that came out of Nassau County on that day. Right? And let's be clear. Now we're going to start to get into the bombshell documentation that I want to show you. Let's be clear. One particular law firm that represents no less than 7 of the local school districts here in Monroe County, and I've explained this to you before, there are essentially 2 law firms that represent all 19 school districts here in Monroe County. One law firm, Ferrara Fiorenza out of Syracuse, and Harris Beach is the other law firm, Big Ivory Tower Law Firm here in downtown Rochester, New York. And I explained to you when this all went down 2 weeks ago, I told you this, and you'll recall, there's no question in my mind that on Monday night, Tuesday morning, in the overnight, these lawyers at Harris Beach and Ferrara Fiorenza were counseling the superintendents on the effect of that Nassau County Court decision. And I told you that the Nassau County Court decision was in fact the law of the land, at least for that day until the stay was put in place. But at the time we spoke about this, it was the law of the land. It didn't matter that there was so-called conflicting decisions, right? It didn't matter that it was a state Supreme Court decision out of Nassau County. I explained to you how that does apply statewide, even though, and I don't mean to get into all the legalities, but you need to understand that a Supreme Court in New York State is not the highest court in New York State, right? Hopefully I've explained that before. It's really kind of an oddity in New York State, the only state in the country where the court titled Supreme Court is not the highest court. In all 49 other states in the United States, the Supreme Court of that particular state is, of course, the highest court. It's, of course, the highest court of the United States of America. But in New York State, where we do everything ass backwards, Supreme Court is actually, believe it or not, the lowest court in New York State. And then it rises up from there to the New York State Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals of New York State is the highest court in New York State. But in any event, what these superintendents were lying to you about on Tuesday morning was that this this court decision was out of Nassau County, and then therefore somehow it wasn't applicable here in Monroe County. And they also, of course, argued that there was these conflicting court decisions, that there was the court decision that came out of Albany County in October, and because the decisions were conflicting, that they didn't have to necessarily follow either one, and that they were simply going to continue to follow what the New York State Department of Education was telling them to do. So now, I believed that when I told you, right? I believed firmly that these school districts, these superintendents were being advised by their attorneys. And what I told you is this: I would be absolutely shocked if we found out, which quite honestly, I never thought we would find out, but now we have. I told you I would be shocked if we later find out that these lawyers advised these superintendents to not follow the law, right? To not follow this Nassau County decision. Because as you recall, what did I tell you? Austin, what did I tell him on this topic? Do you remember about the attorneys advising them on following the law?
That it's illegal for an attorney to advise a client to break the law?
Bing, 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 bing. Austin wins the prize, right? Yes, it's illegal. It's unethical, which is essentially illegal for all intents and purposes. It's unethical and illegal for an attorney to advise his or her client to break the law. So I said to you, I would be shocked if we were to find out later that Harris Beach or Ferrara Fiorenza, that a lawyer at one of those firms would have advised one of these superintendents, yeah, you know what? Go ahead and disregard Nassau County Court decision. Don't worry about it. Do whatever you want, right? Enforce the mask mandates when the kids show up at school tomorrow. Well, guess what, folks? Guess what? They didn't do that, right? They didn't do that. Here's the proof. Austin, did I send this to you? I don't know if it's something we can pull up on the screen or not.
Oh, unless
it's a 3-page document. Yeah, it's the.
Oh, is this one?
It's that link. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it up here.
Folks, what's on the screen right now is available on the internet. Believe it or not. I'm actually shocked that it's on the internet, but it appears to be, and a client of mine found this. Great research for him to find this. This is a blog, apparently, that a lawyer at Harris Beach wrote. And when you read through it, it's obvious when you read through it that it appears that it was more formally sent directly to the local school districts as essentially a memo counseling the superintendents and the school district board of education on how to treat this Nassau County ruling. And guess what? It says just what we would have expected it to say, right? Of course, it doesn't say, you know what, folks, go ahead and violate the Nassau County court ruling and enforce the mask mandate. And I'll try to read through this as quickly as I can and highlight some of the parts. On Monday, January 24th, a Nassau County trial court judge decided that the New York State Department of Health rule mandating masks be worn in all public buildings, including schools, was unconstitutional and invalid. Right? You heard me tell you that. You've heard me say that many times. Unconstitutional, unenforceable, invalid, illegal, and void. I threw a few more adjectives in there. The mandate was in place and was supposed to continue through February 21st, 2022. Almost immediately after being issued, the state appealed the decision. The state requested a stay of the decision so the mandate would remain in effect while the lower court's decision was being reviewed. The stay was granted until at least Friday, January 28th, when further argument in the case will be heard. The New York State Attorney General, New York State Department of Health, and the New York State Department of Education have indicated the decision applies statewide, not just in Nassau County, right? So where were these superintendents making this lie up from? Were they making it up out of whole cloth? How did they come up with this lie? You've seen the lie. You received the email from your local superintendent Monday night, Tuesday morning, where they told you that it didn't apply statewide, that it only applied perhaps in Nassau County. Here's the memo that their lawyers wrote, declaring that it applies statewide. Let's go on. The decision has raised many questions about the implications for school districts moving forward. While the issues in this case may not be finally decided for some weeks, given the possibility of additional appeals, it is prudent for schools to consider options should the lower court's decision ultimately be upheld. The following Q&A offers perspective. So the rest of this I'll kind of go through more succinctly if I can. The first question posed by the lawyers at Harris Beach: is it possible that the New York State Department of Health could put another mask mandate in place for the future? And the answer is yes. Of course, that's possible. This part of the memo is not all that important. Obviously, the Department of Health could try to put another mask mandate in place, but unless they cure the defects that were identified by the Nassau County Court, which one of them they can't cure, right? The crux of the ruling that came out of Nassau County was that they overstepped their bounds. Again, they are not a legislative lawmaking entity. They're not the New York State legislature. So there's no way they could ever cure that, right? Unless the New York State legislature gets together and says, we divest our authority and give it completely over to the Department of Health, which of course that would never uphold in court either. So it just can't be, right? If that's the ultimate determination after the appeals process runs its course, then there is no way, quite frankly, that the Department of Health or any other agency, including your local school board, could ever institute lawfully another mask mandate in the future. So the next question is, could NYSED, New York State Education Department, mandate masks if the New York State Department of Health regulation is invalidated? This is exactly the issue that I posed and explained to you 2 weeks ago. I said to you this: if this court has ruled that the agency that's responsible for public health in New York State, the Department of Health, if this court ruled, which it did, that the Department of Health doesn't have the authority to issue mask mandates, then certainly no other entity can. Not the Department of Education, not the Department of Motor Vehicles, not the Department of Social Services, right? Obviously, these executive agencies, which are not lawmaking agencies, just to cover that one more time, if these executive agencies, non-lawmaking agencies, if the one that actually does have some regulatory authority over public health doesn't have the authority for a mask mandate, then clearly, logically, no other agency could. That's the crux of the ruling. The lawyers here at Harris Beach, they say maybe. To me, when they say maybe, quite honestly, and I'm not trying to be overly cynical here, tongue in cheek, but when they say maybe, they know the answer is no. They just want to leave it open-ended, so they're never right or wrong. And of course, when you're representing a school district that has an infinity for a budget when it comes to legal fees, you want those school districts to keep coming back to you for more legal services. So you don't really have to give them a straight answer. You just, as the lawyers, you just want the litigation to continue to roll, right? You're getting big retainers from these school districts, tens of thousands, right? It could be into the millions by now, I imagine. It is. There's no question. It's into the millions. The lawyers in New York State that represent school districts, and I'm not just talking about these two firms here in Monroe County, of course. I'm talking about statewide. They've made millions of dollars off of representing school districts since all this COVID stuff came down. All right. Lastly, the last question posed: in the absence of a state mandate, can a local school board, this is where it gets good, can a local school board still mandate mask wearing despite the court's ruling? They say likely yes. Lie, right? I call lie. That's their opinion, supposedly. Again, I tie it to the money, in my opinion. They're trying to get more money out of these districts. At the bottom, they talk about how, you better be ready for more lawsuits, which they'd welcome over there at the law firm, I'm sure. But there's just simply no way. There's simply no way that if the state mandate is tossed out on legal grounds, that a local school board could ever possibly win a court challenge trying to step into the shoes of not only the New York State Department of Health, but then step in the shoes of the lawmaking body, the legislative branch. How could that be, folks? Right? The best way to answer that question is just to pose the rhetorical question. How could it be? How could a board of education step into the shoes of the Department of Health and the legislative body if a court rules that Department of Health can't do that. If the Department of Health can't step into the shoes of a legislative body, how in the hell can the school board at Podunk, New York Central School District step into those shoes? What expertise does a local school board have over a public health emergency? I mean, it almost doesn't even dignify a discussion or an analysis. But I'll tell you what's important, though, because you always want to know what the hell they're thinking. The lawyers direct the school districts to Education Law 2801 regarding a code of conduct for the maintenance of order on school property as the local school district's possible authority to do this. And that's just preposterous. I mean, it really is almost laughable. Here's New York State Education Law, Section 2801, and it does provide, and this is the law, right? New York State Education Law does allow school districts, in fact, it requires school districts to implement a code of conduct on school property to maintain the order on school property. And they use phrases like safety and security of students to eliminate the threats of weapons, physical force, vandalism, violation of students' civil rights, like the right to not wear a mask, and threats of violence. So when you read New York State Education Law, Section 2801 in its entirety as a whole, clearly a code of conduct. Look, you don't need a lawyer to understand what a simple code of conduct is. A code of conduct is how you behave when you're at school. It's literally how you behave at the school dance, right? It's what time you have to leave the school by after school's over, right? A code of conduct is a uniform policy. It's don't swear in school. It's check your cell phone at the door, okay? That is code of conduct, not jumping into the shoes of the Department of Health and the legislative body of New York State and mandating, which is effectively requiring by the force of law and the threat of law to wear a mask to cover your face. And again, sometimes the best way to answer these questions is to pose the question right back at the people who claim they have this authority. Ask the board of this. Can a board of education require students under the code of conduct to eat certain foods while they're at school? Right? I mean, if we're going to take these lawyers' opinion on this to its logical conclusion, and that is they're pointing the school districts in the direction of, you may be able to get a mask mandate in place under the code of conduct provisions as far as maintenance of order on school property and as far as assuring the security and safety of students. Well, wouldn't that also apply to what they eat, right? What they drink? So wouldn't that go to their safety and security? I mean, you are what you eat, right? So why couldn't a school district do that? And obviously, you know that they can't, right? I mean, we all know that New York City tried to do that a few years ago. I think it was de Blasio, Comrade de Blasio. He tried to pass those New York or mandate by executive order New York City ordinances where you couldn't have more than a 32-ounce Slurpee, right? You can't do that. It was struck down. It's illegal, right? In America, you have the right to kill yourself through what you eat and drink. You just do. It's called freedom of choice. So if a school district can't tell your kids what to eat and not eat under the guise or the ruse of safety and security, certainly they can't tell your kid to wear a mask and claim it's for their safety and security. How about this? Why don't they just make it illegal to talk during school, right? Take the masks off, but now you're not allowed to talk. That way you're not spreading any moisture droplets, right? Why can't the school district do that under the code of conduct? According to these lawyers, they could, right? These lawyers are claiming that that they could thread the needle. They're claiming that the Board of Education can thread the needle, mandate the mask under New York State Educational Law 2801, which deals with codes of conduct, and they could thread that needle under safety and security of students, that somehow the school districts have this general power to regulate and institute policies and rules that deal with the safety and security of students. So I guess then the Board of Education could write a policy that says that while you're at school, students can't talk. What do they need to talk for? They do all their work on laptops. Everything's on a Chromebook. The teacher has a Chromebook. They can just communicate back and forth on Chromebooks, right? All through class, all through the day. Everything can be typed. Robotic, right? We don't need, these kids don't need to talk, right? That would keep the noise levels down. It would allow for higher concentration. I mean, you can hear it now, right? These people can rationalize anything. They've rationalized why our kids are wearing masks as they walk around themselves smiling with no masks on. They can rationalize anything. It sounds absurd, but so would wearing masks 2 years ago in school indefinitely. So nothing is outside the scope. These lawyers are already pointing to where they should go with this, right? So that's that. So this memo that's on the internet. Now, I don't have, just to be clear, I don't have any direct proof or evidence that this memo was specifically delivered and counseled to the superintendents, but read it for yourself. There's a link here. Austin, are you able to post the actual link for people to see, or can we just tell them what the link is?
Yeah, I'll post it in the comments or in the description under the video when we post
okay,
it.
Good. What I want you guys to do is, like I always say, don't take my word for it. Click on the link and read it. You can read between the lines. You can read this and tell that it was a memo that was written to the school districts. And even if it wasn't specifically written and given to and delivered to the school districts, this is obviously the opinion of the lawyers at Harris Beach, who are in fact the attorneys of record for the school district on these topics. So if they wrote it in a blog and the school district calls them, and oh, by the way, it says right at the end, as it is, ready for this, as it is impossible to thoughtfully address, no shit, all implications of such an action, if you are considering taking such an action, meaning if you, the school districts, are considering your own mask policies as a code of conduct, we encourage you to review your plan with the Harris Beach attorney with whom you normally work, right? I mean, if that doesn't tell you for sure that this was written and directed to the school districts, then I don't know what would. I guess maybe I'm just being overly cautious about confirming, what my source is here. This came from the internet. I'm surprised that it's out there on the internet. A client of mine found this. And this proves that the school districts were more than likely, if not most certainly, put on notice by their own lawyers last Monday and Tuesday that they had to follow the law out of Nassau County, at least for that one day. And they chose not to. Now, that gets us to this. Here's an email. And Austin, I don't think I sent this to you. I have an email here. This is out of the Fairport Central School District. The email is a little blurry. It looks like it came over as a picture, so it's a little blurry. I'll do my best to read it. Now, I believe this email, yes, it's the principal at Martha Brown Middle School, David Dunn, D-U-N-N. So the principal at Martha Brown Middle School writes this email. The subject is update for staff and students, dated January 25th, 7:49 a.m. Okay, again, folks, I laid this all out last Tuesday for you, or 2 Tuesdays ago, right? I laid out to you what I believed was happening in real time, Monday night, Tuesday morning. In fact, I think I even said early Tuesday morning. And now, 2 weeks later, I actually have the documents that back all that up, right? Here's an email Tuesday morning at 7:49 a.m. So these guys and gals were literally in process of digesting this court ruling. They were getting their advice, and they were running with it. They were working on this, just as I suspected they were. And here's what it says. Please read the email from Brett, referring to presumably Brett Provenzano, who I believe is the superintendent in Fairport. He says, please read the email from Brett. We have already received at least one email from a parent that will be sending their children to school today without masks. Until the courts are overturned legally We have no recourse. You hear that? Do you hear that? The principal at Martha Brown Middle School in Fairport put in an email. He exposed right in the email what the marching orders were. Until the courts are overturned, we have no recourse. That's what we told you, right? It's what we told you last Tuesday on the podcast. It's what everyone has told you. They knew that they had to follow the law. Their lawyers told them that they had to follow the law. They didn't want to follow the law. These are lawless people. So what do? They acknowledge amongst themselves in an email that they didn't expect would get out. They acknowledge amongst themselves because they're stupid. They're lawless and stupid. So they put it in writing. Until the courts are overturned, legally, we have no recourse. Translation: today, we cannot enforce the mask mandate. They did, though, didn't they? Right? Let's go on. What I recommend. No, the email should have stopped with, we have no recourse. But no, now the email has to carry on with, okay, this is how we're going to get around it, right? Because we're lawless people. What I recommend is to keep everything in the positive, right? So in other words, we're going to look the parents in the eye with a smile and we're going to lie to them, right? That's what they mean by keeping it positive. We're going to lie with a smile on our face. But it's hard to see the smile with their masks on. And say, as Brett says, right? So now he's being the puppet. He's letting you know that he's the puppet for Brett. Brett's the puppet for the New York State Department of Education. Brett's the superintendent. As Brett says, we are still required by SED, right? That's State Education Department, to mask. Remind students of the importance of social distancing in your classrooms. If you notice that there are several students not masked, notice he doesn't say one, because I'll tell you what, he chose those words carefully. If it's one student, they have no problem targeting and bullying and harassing and segregating one student, right? Because these are bullies themselves. These principals and these superintendents, they're disgusting human beings. They really are, in my opinion. They're admitting it right here. So it's no longer my rhetoric. They're admitting right here that if there are several students, please do not confront them. These are his words. If you see several students not masked, please do not confront them. Like they're a gang of monkeys, right? I mean, this is what you tell your kids when they go out into the woods for a hike. If you get confronted by a couple bears, don't confront them. Here's our principals describing our kids as if they're a pack of monkeys or wolves. If you see several of them unmasked, don't confront them. Why? Because they're following the law. If you are doing any type of group work that puts students less than 3 feet apart, I would pivot, right? They love their little code words, pivot. They would pivot to a different type of instruction, blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't make a public statement as to why you are doing this. No, right? Don't admit what you're doing out loud. Just do it. And that's what he says. I would just do it. This is an example. This gets even better, folks. This is an example of the times we live in. Yeah, exactly. Where a court actually steps in finally and puts an end to your lawlessness. And then you go and put into an email less than 12 hours later that you're going to break the law, right? This is an example of the times we live in where there are so many conflicting points of view. No, it's a court ruling, jackass. It's the law. It's not a conflicting point of view. It's the law. And you broke it. And you wrote about it. And you put it in writing that you were breaking the law. And you described that your superintendent was the one advising you to break the law. Hopefully the courts will be overturned soon. I mean, folks, I can't even go on. This is just so incredibly appalling. He says, this is David Dunn, Martha Brown Middle School, Fairport, New York. Hopefully the courts will be overturned soon. Not, you know what, folks? I'm not going to give you my personal opinion because my personal opinion doesn't matter. But as we've been telling these parents for the past 18 months, we swore to uphold the law and we will uphold the law. Therefore, today, if parents elect to send their children to school with no masks on, we are to follow the law and not enforce the mask mandate. Nope, Nope. They say the exact opposite. They acknowledge that the law exists. They say we're going to break the law. They give their plan on how to go about breaking the law. And then they say, hopefully the law will go away so that we can go back to our lawless behavior without having to hide it, right? I mean, this just never ends, folks. I don't want to see anyone get caught up in this situation where there is so much negative energy around rights. What the hell is he saying? He doesn't want to see anyone get caught up in negative energy around rights? You mean he doesn't want to see people exercising their rights? What else does he mean by that? Again, folks, David Dunn, Martha Brown Middle School. He says he doesn't want to see anyone getting caught up, quite frankly, exercising their rights. He wants the courts to be overturned. Let me know if you need me or Ryan to visit your classroom at any time today. I wonder what he would be doing if he visited the classroom. Hopefully not like the Hilton principal. Hopefully he would visit with a couple adults. Stay strong. We have handled much worse. Much worse than what? A court ruling? They've handled much worse than the law? Unreal. Unfreaking real. Austin, can you believe that?
That is it's pretty insane.
I mean, Austin, you were with me 2 Tuesdays ago.
I was
on the
I was right
podcast
here.
when this was all happening in real time. If I had the time and I wanted to actually put in writing what something that I could make sound is as ridiculous as possible coming out of a board, a superintendent or a principal in Monroe County on this issue of the law and the new court ruling and all that. If I wanted to put pen to paper and come up with something that would sound the most ridiculous that I could possibly sound, I would have written this. I would have crafted this email that David Dunn sent to the staff. It's, by the way, it's directed to MS staff. I'm sorry, MB staff, which presumably stands for Martha Brown Middle School. So this was the principal writing to his staff, letting them know in no uncertain terms that we don't like the court's ruling. We know it's the court. We know it's the law, but we're not going to follow it. Here's how to get around it. Don't confront these kids if they're in groups. And we hope that this gets overturned soon. And we don't like when people exercise their rights. So let's try to stay strong because we've been through much worse. Shocking. So I have the proof, folks. I told you what was happening in real time. Here's the proof. You have the lawyers letting them know that the law is the law and you have to follow it. But if you want to do something about it legally, you need to start working on Board of Education policies, which I just addressed why I don't think that would fly. But nonetheless, it was, generally speaking, it was legitimate advice, right? It was legitimate advice that Harris Beach was giving because they were telling them, this is the law. You have to follow it for now. If there is something that you can do, this would be it, right? In other words, not this will work. In fact, as I mentioned to you in that memo, somewhere in there, it says that you're likely to run into more legal challenges. So they're acknowledging, look, you can try this under the New York State education law, the code of conduct law. You can try it, but you're going to run into some challenges. And then at the same time, in real time, we have the proof where one of the local school districts at the administrative level, right? This isn't some teacher gone rogue. This is a principal who's regurgitating, admittedly, what they were told by their SI, the superintendent, Brett Provenzano in Fairport, to go ahead and break the law. And this is how to do it. Not only break it, but this is how we want you to break it. Shocking, to say the least. If you are a parent at Martha Brown Middle School and you don't think your kids should be masked, my gosh, I can't tell you over the airwaves here what I think you should be doing, but maybe you can figure it out. So that so where are we at here on time? It's 5:30. I got there's a couple more things that I did want to cover here. So let me see here if I have those documents. As far as, let me just gather my thoughts here. As far as these school districts go in the future, and the Board of Education policies, and what they're planning on doing. So many of you in the last couple days have received surveys, right? So now the school districts are sending out surveys, right? They're sending out surveys that are asking us. Here's a sample of one of the surveys up on the screen. They're asking us as stakeholders, right? Again, they love their code words. We're stakeholders. We're not parents. These aren't children. We're just stakeholders. And they're asking us stakeholders to let them know what our position is on masking. Is it optional? Do we think it should be optional, or do we think it should be required? Now, you always have to look past the surface of these things and understand what's really going on. And quite frankly, when I first got the survey in my district, I was a little bit encouraged, and then I was like, whoa, slow down, dummy. You know that there's way more to this. You explain these things all the time, so just take a minute to think about it. And I was like, okay, now the light bulb went off. Oh, I know what's going on. And then I come across this this memo that I had just read to you from Harris Beach, and what these surveys are. Of course, it's not the school district really wanting to know what yours and mine opinion are on masking in schools, because if it was simply that, well, then why wouldn't they have done that 2 years ago, right? No, of course. 2 years ago, they told us there's nothing we can do. Our hands are tied. Complain to the state. They didn't say, you know what, Mr. Hummel, you're correct. You know what, Miss Smith, you're correct. We should consult with you, the parents. Let's do a survey. That's a great idea, Mr. Hummel. Let's do a survey. And if the results come back overwhelmingly that masks should be optional, we'll make masks optional. And if it comes back that they should be mandatory, well, then we'll make them mandatory. Obviously, that's not what they did, because that wasn't what they wanted to do. They don't care about our opinion. They don't want us to decide on our own that masks should be optional. So why would they be doing it now? Well, the answer is simply this: because because their lawyers are telling them, look, if you are going to institute your own policy, okay, if you're going to institute a Board of Education policy that's going to replace the New York State Department of Health, all right, and let's just be clear here. What they're gearing up for is they know they're going to lose this lawsuit, right? In the long run, after the appeals are exhausted, they're planning on the event where they lose the lawsuit, which I quite frankly think is going to happen. So I do believe that eventually the Court of Appeals of New York State, the highest court of New York State, is going to strike down NYCRR 2.60 for the very reasons that are laid out in that Nassau County Court decision. The judge wrote a great decision. It's spot on. It runs right through the whole gamut of law, and it's going to get tossed. So that section that's up on the screen right now, 2.60 from the Department of Health, that's going to get tossed. And what Harris Beach in this memo is alerting the school districts to is, if you are going to possibly successfully, from a legal standpoint, institute a Board of Education code of conduct policy that requires masks, the law, right, the educational law in New York State requires you to get the opinion of all your stakeholders, right? You have to put it out to the community in part. That's just one factor, right? It's not the end all be all. It's not a vote per se. It's not a majority rules per se, but it's part of the law that if you are going to institute code of conduct policies, or Board of Education policies, you must get the input of your stakeholders. So that's all this is, right? They're just making a record so that they're just checking a box. So if there's 5 or 6 boxes that they need to check so that they don't get thrown out on a technicality when somebody, when somebody challenges one of these Board of Education masking mandates after the mandate from New York State gets thrown out, the school districts want to eliminate all possible challenges, right? They want the case to be decided on the merits, and it could get tossed out on a technicality if they don't have proof that they sought community input. So that's all this survey is. Trust me, right? Believe me when I tell you, right? I told you what was going on 2 Tuesdays ago, and today I showed you the proof that I was correct. Believe me when I'm telling you right now, okay? And again, like I always say, you don't have to believe me. Listen to what their own lawyers are telling them. In this memo, where if Austin hasn't posted the link to it yet, he's going to read the memo. It's a 2.5-page memo. It's a good, easy read. The lawyers at Harris Beach, who represent multiple school districts in Monroe County, are telling them you need to collect data from your community members, and make that part of your Board of Education policy. So that's all this survey is. Now, here's what I really wanted to talk about when it comes to this survey. Austin, if you could put that survey back up on the screen. I don't know if any of my viewers caught this or not. And scroll up to the part that's in green. You see at the top where it says Masking in Schools Survey for students. Now, of course, I'm not a student. I received one that says Masking in Schools Survey for parents. Would you believe this is East Irondequoit? Okay, I don't know if other school districts are doing this for students. I haven't heard it yet. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Would you actually believe that they're surveying the kids on whether masks should be mandatory? Think about that. This is supposedly a response. Wearing a mask is supposedly a response to a public health emergency, right? Doctors, scientists, I don't know. Austin, what else comes to mind? Doctors, scientists.
I don't know. Nurses.
Yeah,
there you go.
6th graders, right? I mean, that's what comes next, right?
Yes.
After doctors, scientists, nurses, the next thing you would have said is a 6th grader, right?
Yes, and then of course the kindergartners.
And then yeah. So 6th graders. Now, Austin, I mean, look, don't make these people out to be worse than they really are. I mean, just so you know, I found out today in an email from my superintendent. I've been going back and forth with my superintendent, and I am thankful that she's been responsive to me because I am a pain in her ass. But nonetheless, she has been somewhat responsive to me over the past couple of days in my emails about this survey. And I asked her, I said, seriously, what the hell are you doing? You're surveying 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds in middle school about what's supposedly a public health emergency? 18 months ago, you told me, I have your email. 18 months ago, you told me that this was a matter of state law and state constitution. Now you're telling me that it's up to the 6th graders to decide? I mean, could this get any more preposterous, people? Could it get any more preposterous? Just when you think there's nothing more preposterous that these people could do, they're asking 6th graders in the East Irondequoit Central School District whether or not masks should be mandatory. Well, what if the kids say no, they shouldn't be mandatory? Is that going to matter? Of course not. I already explained to you this survey is nothing but a check the box thing.
Well, then they can do the opposite. They can be like, see, 6th graders. You're going to trust 6th graders with this opinion?
Exactly. Exactly. It'll all come out no matter what, right? They flip-flop. They get on whatever side they need to get on. So there you have it. I mean, they're literally stooping to whatever the lowest common denominator, right? I'm sorry. It's so mind-boggling that it ties my tongue up, right? They stoop to the lowest common denominator on all of this stuff. It's shocking. It's bizarre. You know, it really does make you wonder. We always say follow the money. I don't know. I mean, I know my district in East Irondequoit received over $9 million of the CARES money. That's the federal government money that came to deal with COVID, blah, blah, blah. I know my district got over 9 million. Your district got millions as well. I don't know. I don't know that this is tied to money anymore. I really honestly believe that there's a significant level of unadulterated evilness in these people. I really do. I don't know. What's your explanation? It's got to be one or the other or both. There is no other explanation that makes sense. I've heard a couple theories, none that really strike me as being the case. A good friend of mine, his theory was these people essentially, they live in a tree. They live in a fantasy world. They live in fantasy land. And that's true. I do agree with that 1,000%, that these people have no accountability. These superintendents, these I'm not looking to badmouth teachers per se. Quite frankly, my wife is a teacher. My sister's a teacher, but they get tenure, and the level of accountability is almost nil once they get tenure. But this isn't about the teachers. This is about the administrators. These administrators are heavily paid and compensated, and they're tied to politics all day long. They're tied into the state. They're tied into the politics. They're tied into the money, and I think they're evil. I really do. So, with that said, just one more thing, real quick. Austin, I had that newspaper article that was highlighted up there. I just wanted to point this out to you folks. This kind of ties into everything we've talked about. So that little highlighted section there, maybe you guys can see it better than I can see it. But essentially what that says is the New York State Department of Education has instructed the school districts not to punish students who don't wear a mask. Right? So if the New York State Department of Education tells them that the mask mandate still exists and they have to follow it, but they're not to punish the students, then ask yourself this: what would be the point of creating local Board of Education policies and code of conduct policies that require masks? Because as we all know, code of conduct policies are things that are always directly enforceable by discipline. That's the point of a code of conduct. It's to provide a level of discipline in schools. Now, discipline in schools, as you know, if you're my age, if you come from my generation, you know that the discipline level in school is basically nothing compared to what the discipline level was when we went to school. It just keeps eroding and eroding and eroding. But what are you going to put into place at a Board of Education, in a Board of Education policy, if there's not going to be discipline tied to it, right? If the rule is check your cell phone at the classroom door and you don't, and you pull it out, you get a warning. If you pull it out again, the teacher takes it away. If you pull it out again after they give it back to you, perhaps you're getting detention. Perhaps you're going to miss an athletic competition, right? If you push a referee at a football game, you're getting disciplined. You're getting suspended from school. You're missing practice and games, right? Break the rule, get the discipline. Are we going to break the rule of wearing a mask and then not be disciplined? Does it make sense? Of course it doesn't. So I'm going to let it go at that. Thank you for joining me, Chad Hummel, on the Got Freedom podcast. Thank you to my producer, Austin, from Rock Vox Productions. And I'd love if you could go to the We the People Podcast Network on Facebook and on YouTube and click like, subscribe. You'll get notification of all of our podcasts. And we're here live in the We the People podcast studio, the Got Freedom podcast every Tuesday. Used to be at 4:00. Now we're going to be mostly at 4:30. So thank you for joining me. And tomorrow I'll be on the Kimberly's Revolution podcast at 4:00. That's with Kimberly Ray and Just Tom. That's our sidekick, Just Tom. That's his awesome nickname. So in any event, you can we would love it if you tuned in tomorrow at 4:00. Jose Pio. When's Jose Pio's podcast? Rochester City Councilman.
Tomorrow night at 8.
Wednesdays at 8. Political correcting or politically.
Yes, politically correcting with Jose Pio.
Yeah. And Austin, plug your own podcast, please.
That'd be Pop Culture Partisans, your weekly dose of PCP every Wednesday at 6:00.
And PCP's legal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as you have your mask on.
Anything's legal if you don't get caught.
Exactly. All right, there you go. We're going to end it there. Thanks for joining me. Got Freedom on the We the People Podcast Network. Go America and buy more ammo.